Now, as many continue to celebrate the matric class of 2024 for the impressive 87.3% pass rate, some have warned of a looming crisis within the higher education sector after a record 337,158 matrics achieved admission to bachelor studies. Now, as it stands, the 26 public universities can only accept 202,000 first-year students. Joining us to discuss the situation is Asive Dlanjwa. He's SA Union of Students Spokesperson. Good evening, Asive. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. What a complex situation. On the one hand, society has commended basic education for the greater focus on educational outcomes, which have to a certain extent resulted in this significant increase in bachelor passes. But on the other hand, some are criticizing the Department of Higher Education for not preparing for such a situation in advance. Where do you stand as the Union of Students on this matter?
Good evening, and also good evening to your viewers and to your listeners. Look, the problem that we are faced with is rather a nuanced one, in the sense that obviously it is a problem that is born out of some of the gains that have been made, particularly in the struggle that we have waged as a union and generally broadly the student movement towards access. So some of the challenges we had in the past, and probably still have to a large extent, have been issues of funding. However, in the last few years, there's been a rapid increase in the ability of the state to be able to fund as students, particularly those of the poor and working class background. And now what that has done is that it has excessively increased, obviously, the demand for higher education. And what is now obviously apparent is that the supply has not been able to keep up. So there's an incongruence, if you like, between the demand and the supply, as it were. So that's the challenge, effectively, that we are facing.
And some are criticizing now the Department of Higher Education for the lack of foresight, that you have this incongruency because of the fact that they should have observed that as you continue to push for the funding of most of these learners, or push for there to be greater support in basic education, that eventually or ultimately it would lead to greater number of students actually attaining those bachelor passes. So they should have been planning well in advance for this eventuality.
Absolutely. That's the second element that I was going to come to, that it is apparent that there was a lack of planning, lack of leadership and foresight. It was obvious even before there was, in fact, for many years, it was obvious that higher education was not, it was not big enough to be able to receive the products of basic education. So you are absolutely correct. There has been issues of a lack of leadership and planning. And this is why we had been saying consistently as a union in general, the student movement, that three things need to happen if government is to respond to this. The first one, we have been consistently calling for a rapid infrastructure development as far as higher education is concerned, saying build more universities, build more colleges, and really that has been happening at a very slow pace. I mean, I think we've built 2 universities probably in the last 15, almost even 20 years. So we've got a challenge, obviously. The second issue which we have been calling for has been the building and making the college sector to be institutions of choice. Currently, there's a misunderstanding in the South African society where we are trying to push all students that are coming out of basic education into universities, which is obviously a small sector. And we have been saying, let us build and invest in the TVET sector such that they become institutions of choice, as such that it will also help with this and not have and you will not have a bottleneck in them.